All of you, every single person here, made a choice. You made a choice to be here, to come to Poland, to look at our roots through what you have heard about what the March of the Living offers you. This place, among so many other places around Poland and the Ukraine and other places, even in France, were affected by that onslaught that happened on September 1st, 1939. That attack on Poland that began what we know as World War II, and to us Jews as the Shoah, the Holocaust. All of you had some sort of preparatory course before this, so you have a background, some sort of background about what led up to this horror. And here we're standing at a grave of 800 children who weren't shot because they couldn't waste the bullets. Instead, the Nazi perpetrators, they took stones and either bashed children over the head or threw them down onto a rock and threw them in this pit right here. It was dug at that time. And all around us, when you walked in, you saw graves over there, graves back there. This was a place where in one of the liquidations of the Tarnow ghetto in the city of Tarnow that we students didn't have a chance to get to because of our late entry, where the adults were just now for a little bit of time. This is where many people ended up in one of the actions. You're going to hear the word action. It's a German word. Sort of a euphemism. That means that they're going to take Jews and they're going to take them somewhere and either bring them to a place like this and massacre them and murder them, or there's going to be an action to take them to a concentration camp or a slave labor camp. An action, spelt with a K in German. This action was one of 3 in the Tarnow ghetto. All of you are going to learn this week that in the different ghettos, and they were very different from each other, huge to the Warsaw ghetto, 450,000 people, to the Tarnow ghetto that had 25,000 people at its height. And Tarnow itself had 25,000 Jews out of 50,000 people living in a city. It was half the population. And in Tarnow, in this area, in the 42, 43, there was resistance. That's why you see that obelisk over there. Because at the same time Jews were being massacred here, the Nazis rounded up suspected or who they knew were partisans. They brought them here and shot them the same way. And they separated the Jews from the non-Jews on the same day. So you have different graves that are well kept. It's well kept by the Polish government. It was well kept during the communist era. All of you know that this country was communist for a long period of time, up till 1990, after the war. And the communists took care of this. We Jews didn't. We came to visit when we knew it was here. And especially after the March of the Living started coming in 1988, you know you're all here for the 30th anniversary of the March of the Living. And many, 275,000 people before you have been to a place like this or places like this. And you look around and you see this place. There are monuments here. Let me tell you something about Tarnow. Our adults had the opportunity to walk through the small streets there. The town's more than 500 to 600 years old. The buildings are that old in that town. When we walk in Krakow, students, tomorrow, I think the adults had the opportunity today to walk in Krakow a bit, you'll see buildings that are 500, 600, and 700 years old, where our brothers and sisters lived. And that includes so many other places in Poland, and by extension, Ukraine, Latvia, and other countries. And we lived in shtetls, those small towns, a small city like Tarnow, and a big city like Warsaw, and a medium-sized city like Krakow. We were everywhere. 3.5 million of us lived in this country prior to September 1st, 1939. And as we go on, many of you have had the opportunity to look at your roots, and many of us have roots here in Poland, or by extension in the other countries that were once Poland. You know, the borders changed a lot here. But Tarnow, with its very vibrant Jewish population, they were part and parcel of the community, although where the adults walked, where we would have walked today, students, was a place called Żydowska Street, Jew Street. And many towns had a Jew Street, because we Jews, either we chose to live by ourselves or we were forced to live by ourselves. And Tarnow was no different. There's a date, November 9th, probably November 10th, 1938. That's called Kristallnacht. Just about everybody here knows that. Exactly 1 year later, the Alta New Shul. A lot of the old shuls, Alta means old, new means new. A lot of the old shuls became the new shul because it's the way it worked there. Because they replaced another shul, but they became old shul 500 years later. They destroyed, the Nazis purposely on that date, 1 year later, 39 days after they attacked Poland, destroyed every single synagogue in Tarnow. How did they do it? By fire. Kristallnacht. The malice, the idea to know that Kristallnacht happened in Germany and Austria a year prior, and the commandants at that time, they said, this is the time we're going to burn those synagogues. Adults, you had the ability to walk those streets. Students, we're going to walk similar streets in Krakow. So in those small streets, when there were roundups, when there were actions, there's one particular story. Not only were the Jews brought to the cemetery there and killed in mass graves like this, another 6,000 were killed in the cemetery in Tarnow. There's a mass grave there too. But they were also killed by going into a sauna, 700 people, by turning up the sauna and torturing to death. And in one of the actions, they brought all these people, 6,000 Jews, and about 700 or 800 partisans, Christians. And you can hear the shooting as you walk in where you walked in. And they would bring parents and children here. And they would separate the parents and the children. The graves that are marked blue are Jewish graves. This is the children's grave. And you're hearing these shots and you're told to undress. And you're separated from your family. It's unimaginable to us. We only read stories about this. Here it happened. And the parents could do nothing. Here's a parent that really tried in Tarnow. Tarnow, they took children and they would take them to different places and they would massacre them and murder them. One woman saw her children in the back of a truck, 2 boys, and the truck was filled with children. And in the streets of Tarnow, you guys walked it, it's very small. So the truck couldn't go that fast. She ran after the truck, got up to the window where the guy was driving, banged on it, said, "Give me my children." The guy looked at her, the Nazi guard said, "Who is this crazy woman? Give me my children." She jumped on the dashboard. He stopped the truck, pushed her off, got out, walked her to the back of the truck. "Which ones are your children?" And she pointed to the 2 boys that were in the back of the truck that she saw. "These are my children. Give me them now. They're my children. You can't do this." And he looked at her. And he said, "You can take one of them." She goes, "No, these are my children. I am taking both of my children. Get out of my way." This was a woman with chutzpah. This was a woman that resisted. I'm not saying that the people in this grave or the people in those graves didn't resist. But this was her way of protecting her children. And the Nazi said, 30 seconds. Choose one. 20 seconds. I can't. How can I choose my first child, the one that I bring up and that we have so many expectations for? How can I do that? And then how can I choose my second child, my second boy who learns everything from his brother, who's so innocent in the world? How could I choose? 10 seconds. Finally, 0 seconds. Says, then make a choice or I'm taking them both. She chose the youngest. Albeit, a couple of days later, she was taken with her youngest. How do we know this? During these actions, there were plenty of eyewitnesses that survived. Testimony. All of us this week are going to hear from our survivors who provide testimony for us. They were eyewitnesses. They're here. We revere their courage. We're honored that they walk with us and talk with us and share those stories that they have of their families and lost relatives. It's about 600 murdered victims, 6 million murdered victims, of which 800 are in this horrible grave.